Well, welcome back to another episode of Red Tinted Glasses, and this is a special interview. Today we are going to be interviewing the Chief Executive of the Community Trust, Liz Bowie. Liz has taken time out of her Monday evening to speak to me about all things Community Trust, what they do, and how they have helped the community during this pandemic, and also what their hopes are for the future and what other initiatives and projects they've got lined up to further help and benefit the local Northeast community. If you are watching on YouTube, please leave a comment with your thoughts on the video, hit that subscribe button and like the video if you've enjoyed what you've watched today. If you're listening, please make sure to hit that follow button and with the notifications on so you get all the latest content as soon as possible. And on Twitter, make sure you follow us at RTG_podcast. Well, Liz, thanks very much for taking the time out to join us on this episode of Red Tinted Glasses. I don't know really where to start on this. We want to do our best to promote the Community Trust. You joined the Community Trust a month before the pandemic. Fair to say you've come in at the deep end, but what was your motivation and to join the Community Trust? Because obviously at the time you didn't know you were going to be joining right in this crazy world that we now live in.
So I had worked at the University of Aberdeen for 21 years. About half of that was in what we call development, so fundraising for the university. And the last 14 years, I was Director of Development and Alumni Relations. So I was doing a lot of work with our, if you like, the university fan base all around the globe for that time. So traveling the world, meeting our alumni and engaging them with the university, and probably didn't think I was going to leave the university, if I was brutally honest. And one of the sort of supporters of the university was Dave Cormack, who I got to know really well. He's a tremendous philanthropist, really believes in community and giving back. And we just hit off each other. Every time we met, we were sparking ideas, and eventually Dave started to tell me about the work of the Community Trust, and I'll be honest, until that point I didn't really know much about it at all. Then this job came up, and I was encouraged to apply, and I was delighted to get the job. But as you say, I came in thinking I was going to be doing a lot of work in the community, but was going to be able to bring my skills from fundraising and, if you like, that development of relationships to the trust to really build up that engagement piece. And in my head, I was thinking there's a real analogy between an alumni base and a football supporter base. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So, you know, if you think of a football supporter, they have a lifelong affiliation to the club. They live it and they breathe it. And people that go to university tend to have that passion for their universities that lasts for the rest of their lives. So Dave and I talked about that similarity. So I suppose motivation was hearing about the trust and what it does. And Dave Cormack's enthusiasm and energy and can-do attitude, you know, just get at it and have a go. So yeah, that was what sparked my interest and got me to cross the road, cross King Street.
Yeah. Was there a bit nervous then going into kind of the unknown then in terms of going into working in a football environment compared to university, or was that kind of a bit reassuring knowing that Dave was going to be there?
It was absolutely terrifying to make the move because I was completely in my comfort zone, you know, knew the place inside out, knew the job inside out, loved, you know, our alumni, etc. But I think you get to a point where you just think, okay, something's happening here, something's happening in my head. And he had piqued that interest. And I suppose if I'm critical of universities in one way, and I know my colleagues back there would, you know, they would understand when I'm going to say this, it's probably a slower pace. It's very committee driven, very papers for everything, whereas Dave had talked about this very fast paced environment that I'd be moving to. I love football. So the two things, you know, that ability to shape things, to try things, to move things on quickly, appealed, and the ability to do something really, really meaningful in the community was massively important. Wasn't that decision? I remember talking to one of our alums in Houston, actually. I was out there and I was saying, I'm not sure. And she paused and she said, Liz, think of the ripples. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, all the fundraising you do, you might never see the outcome. So you might get funding for research and that might be decades away finding a cure for something. Whereas what you're going to be able to do in the community trust, you will be able to see children, young people impacted very quickly in a positive way.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually. I suppose it would be amiss to not mention Duncan Skinner as well. Obviously, the sad passing of Duncan, but someone that you grew to know very well and work closely alongside as well. A man who had such a great impact on the community trust. How important was he to helping you settle into your role at the community trust? His
passing it's just a massive blow. It's a massive blow to everybody that knew him, to his family, of course, and to everybody within the club and the trust. He was part of our family, so we're incredibly saddened by that. But what he's left behind, and what I encourage the team to think about, is he created a tremendous legacy, and it's incumbent on all of us to do what we can to continue that and to grow it for him. He was great fun, he was smart, he was challenging, he, for me personally, so supportive. So he swept me into the AFC family. I felt like I'd been there forever, but he really was an inspiration and a huge support, particularly at the beginning when you're new into this new environment, and then 4 weeks in you're into a pandemic. It was wonderful to have him here.
Yeah, he's certainly a man that kind of almost put others before himself, and he definitely had the thought of the community at the forefront as well. And yeah, it's obviously sad to see him pass, but I think his impact on what he did will still always be remembered, and it's good
Absolutely.
to see that you keep reminding the team of that.
Absolutely, and I can't say what it's going to be, but there will be an opportunity for people to get involved in a legacy program that we're building that will be in Duncans on it, and there will be fundraising around that, and we'll be really, really shouting it from the rooftops. So I may be back, Glen, to talk to you about that in a few weeks' time.
No, that's good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So he will have something in his memory that will be really meaningful and impactful for the community.
Oh, perfect. I just want to get into kind of what the Community Trust does and what it stands for. So there's 3 pillars that the Community Trust has. It's education, football for life, and healthy communities. How important to you is having those 3 pillars in terms of getting the right direction for the Community Trust? I mean, we'll go into depth on each of them in a while, but it's just, how important is that for you?
So I actually, if I'm honest, I like to talk about kind of the vision and the mission. So we talk about maximising the potential of our communities through physical and mental well-being. And those pillars kind of sit underneath that. So they're, if you like, the delivery vehicle for that intention. So they help us internally to really focus on those key strands that we have within the trust. So whilst I think the structure is important, I think it's that overall message is the one that we want to get out there. That it's about maximising that potential, making people the best that they can be.
And I think, when the club and the Community Trust themselves released the video, I think it was last month, the one of our own video, were you surprised at just how big an impact that video had amongst the support? I mean, it even reached John McGinn down in Aston Villa. He was even sharing it. I
know, I was delighted about that.
Crazy how far that impact it had.
It was. I'll tell you how that all came about. We'd done a lot of work previously on dementia, and had this wonderful video created that you may have seen about one of our supporters who sadly has dementia. And it was beautifully shot. And what we really wanted to do was tell the story of the trust, but through the eyes of a child. Now, the difficulty for us doing that was obviously with safeguarding and protecting the anonymity of children. We could never actually engage with a real child, for want of a better word. So we wanted to do something with child actors. And we were lucky enough that we had a donor that was very keen that we told our story and supported us to make the video. So the story is a real story. It's based on a real story, sadly. So it is about a child who was taken away from a very, very difficult home, was put into care, but through the interventions of the trust, began to come out of themselves and really has stepped up. And now we're still hearing things about that child and how they're outperforming some in the class at maths, for example. And luckily, home life has improved and they're back home with mum. And that's great. That's amazing. And that's wonderful. So for us, I guess what we were trying to get across is, yes, we play football with children and we run football camps, and that football pillar is really important about that physical activity. But the trust is so much more than football. We are so much more than what happens on the pitch. And we use football as a hook with young people and with older generations too, but particularly in that educational setting, it's that love of football and it's that passion for that badge, that AFC badge, that can just unlock something in a young person and a child, that, you know, they tend to open up to our coaches. They build that trust and that rapport. It's not Mrs. Bowie coming in to teach, it's Liz, the coach, coming in, and that psychologically there's just a difference there. So in short, we were delighted with the reaction to the video, but we hope that it's opened people's eyes to what we do, and how we're so much more than just, you know, some drills on a football pitch.
Yeah, and that's why and that's why I was hoping, and obviously thankful that you've come onto the podcast, because I think it's important to highlight that the work that the Community Trust does, and like you said, it's more than football. But on football, you obviously have Community Trust days at Tawdry. Unfortunately, this year's one couldn't have any fans. Just how important are having these days that are dedicated to the Community Trust at Tawdry? How important are they for you?
Massively important. So there may be a misunderstanding out there that we're funded by the club. We're not. We're an independent charity. So we have to raise all of our income to keep our staff who can do these amazing things out in the community, and to fund all the programmes. We have some incredible benefactors, and certainly during Still Standing Free, what the directors were able to do through personal donations that match 10% of the season ticket sales just helped us immeasurably through those difficult times. And we're so grateful to all the fans who, you know, took that leap of faith and bought their season tickets last year. And from those sales, we knew that we were going to get that 10% coming across. So I take this as an opportunity to say thank you. To encourage you also to buy your season ticket this year, if you would. Yeah,
I'm sure Rob and Dave will be thankful of your little plug there.
Well, you know, they know, and I know that, you know, getting fans back is just going to make such a massive difference at Tawdry. And the Trust is going to have a part to play in that as well. So we're looking forward to helping with that fan experience. And it's been an interesting time, and, you know, to come back to having fans and back in the stadium and to having trust days, those kind of things really, really help us. We really get a lot of support from individuals, from some of the contracts that we have with the councils, and I know we're going to talk about education, we have big contracts there, but that philanthropic support is really what we want more and more of. And again, another, always one for a plug, another thing that we're looking to do is to try and encourage fans to start thinking about a regular donation. So, you know, when you're giving £10 a month to the Red Cross, for example, you could be doing that for your community trust, and you could be helping people in the community. So we're going to be doing a bit more publicity around ways to give. And in fact, if you were watching the Ross County game before Christmas, we had a virtual takeover that time, and we trialled text giving for the first time, and that was really, really good. So again, thank you to those of the fans who generously supported us.
Yeah, no, and you know, as we were discussing before recording this episode, you know, we've had fans contacting us on the Twitter page. If you don't follow us, it's at @RTG_podcast, and feel free, if you are fundraising for the Community Trust, to let us know what you're doing, and we'll be happy to promote that on any future episodes of the podcast. We did that one for Gary, who was running 10k each half and giving himself a 15-minute break, and then doing 10k in the second half for the away games. So we've promoted that for him, and it's great to see that fans are looking at the Community Trust for ways of donating. And like you said, it's maybe one that fans should consider, but not just fans, anybody else that is fundraising. Look at ways of helping your local community, and we will go into detail on how you guys are helping the local community. But just before we do, how much of a help has having a base at Cormac Park helped the Community Trust?
So having the facilities at Cormac Park is superb. I will say we've only been able to use it a little bit because of this pandemic. So we got going in November 2020, and then it was shut down come January, February time. We just shut down. We got going again end of November, and then we got shut down again. So we're back open, but in a really limited capacity at the moment, in the evenings with a number of affiliated clubs. So we haven't really, Glen, had the chance yet to see it in its full potential. The facilities are superb. The actual building, we haven't had access inside the building since the pandemic started. So it's part of the football bubble. And I remember Derek McInnes laughing with me, going, "You're not getting inside that building." I said, "Derek, I'm not coming in, because the last thing I want is the Community Trust infecting the first team in any way." But we haven't seen its full potential, but I think once we get in there, especially when we see the little ones, you know, being able to train where their heroes are training, it's going to be lovely to see that.
Definitely.
We're looking forward to it.
No, it'll be good to see how that will help the Community Trust. But we'll move on to the pillars that we were speaking about, and the first one being education. Now, the Community Trust covers schools from Cove all the way up to Fraserburgh, but you also have youth ambassadors that play a vital role. Could you give a bit more detail on them and how important they are?
Yeah, sure. So again, Youth Ambassador Programme has kind of had to pause during the pandemic. But what would normally happen is the Youth Ambassador Programme would take young people on a programme of around about a year, and it's primarily focused around volunteering. The aim is to help support these young people, again, to maximise potential, to get them to a point where they may go into further higher education, or they may go into work. And we've got a number of examples of individuals who've come through there, then become coaches, and are now working full-time within the trust. So they volunteer, but they also get training and they get mentoring. So it helps us to expand our work. As I said, we're self-funded, so we do rely on volunteers to support us in terms of capacity. And nothing finer than having a young person come through and then end up working for us at the end of it. We love that. So they're very important.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And there's also the breakfast club, I believe, that the community trust do, and the help of the community trust in these schools has been noted to improve attendance. And just even from experience of colleagues that have children involved in these programs, she says that the one day that her son will always be on time and behaved at school is the day that the community trust are there. So yeah. I know that's one example and a very small scale, but these sort of initiatives that the community trust have installed in schools, it's just vitally important, isn't it?
Yeah. And we're working in 23 schools, as you say, from, the south of Aberdeen right up to the northeast of Scotland. Mm-hmm. And they're predominantly primary schools, but we do work in a number of secondary schools, and we also have what we call our alternative academies, which I'll come back on to. But what you're talking about, closing that poverty attainment gap, and that's reliant on things like improving attendance at school, getting that confidence built up. Mm-hmm. One of the things I did manage to do before lockdown is I went to one primary school in Aberdeen, and a little anecdote of there were kids playing football, and we were doing sort of fun drills with them. They were only about 4 or 5, and these were children who were quite challenging in the classroom, and they were identified as needing that extra support. And football was a place where they got to know the individual coaches, and some sort of individual conversations were had, and there was that one-to-one rapport. Anyway, I'm there and I'm standing watching on, and little boy about 8 or 9 kicked the ball, hit me. I kicked it away, and the coach beside me he looked, and the wee boy, and he said, sorry, and he ran off again. And she looked, and she said, that's amazing. And I said, what? I managed to kick a ball? And she said, no. She said, the fact he said sorry, she said he would not have spoken to a grown-up, and he certainly wouldn't have apologised maybe, 6 months ago. And this child had been late for school something like 80 times in the previous year. He's never late. This was last February. He's never late now because he comes to the breakfast club and then he goes into school. Now, I'm not saying we've solved everything, but that was a child who was disengaged and is now coming in and is participating, and the confidence is growing. But it's a good example of the impact that we can have with some of these children who come from very difficult households. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, if you're coming into school, you've maybe not had breakfast, you've maybe not had that nice warm hug before you go out the door, you're coming in and you're being asked, why have you not got the right clothes on? Well, you maybe not got the right clothes on because mum's just not engaged at all, and it's not your fault. That then impacts your behaviour and your self-worth, etc. So it's helping with all of those things.
And then what's the difference then from the work or maybe difference is the wrong word, correct me, but from what you're doing in the primary schools compared to the academies? Because obviously you're working with slightly older children that maybe will be getting ready to leave from 4th year onwards. So what work do you guys do there? So
I guess there's 2 areas we're working. One is in your traditional school setting, in academies there, and there's a variety of programs that we run. Again, football is the hook, but a lot more work getting into, I suppose, a bit more depth into the actual issues that some of these young people are facing, and talking about some of those social issues. So social media. What should they be doing with social media? What are the impacts of social media? It might be a focus within a class. There's all sorts of things that we do within the sort of traditional setting that are more along those lines. So they're not numeracy and literacy per se, but they're talking about those kind of more behavioural things. We are, however, looking at, and I guess this is more primary, but I should have said we're looking at STEM subjects as well. Okay. So science, technology, engineering and maths. How do you use football to help children engage with those subjects?
Clever.
And really interesting way of doing it. So if you think about physiology as part of science, well, let's look at what speed does Niall McGinn have between, 100 metres? And what does he have to do to make him go that quickly? What bits of his anatomy does he have to engage? And what's his lung capacity? Making, so hooking it back to a player's performance. If you think about engineering, looking at how do you build a new Pataudry? What are the things that you would have to think about to build a new Pataudry, besides planning permission? What are the key things, So we've been developing curriculum around that and supporting teachers around that as well. And I should have said, during the pandemic, we've done a lot of online delivery as well.
Okay.
So again, at points where teachers were coming to us and saying, we can't get children to engage at all. Can you help us? We delivered at primary and at secondary online curriculum. So again, if you think of primary, we might have done something in maths like had all the team shirts up with the players' names on them and said, pick out the primary numbers in there and multiply 1 by 2 and incorporate those things together. So we do try and, again, using that hook of football, but using it in a quite innovative way. But to come back to the secondaries, the other thing we do at secondary school is run our alternative academies. Okay. So at the moment we've 3 running in the Shire, and we will be doing some soon in the city, which we're really excited about. This is where we take young people who, they are very challenging, and they're at the point, some of them, of they're either not attending school or they may be excluded from school. Okay. And we take them into different settings, a smaller group. Some of them are actually out with the school environment, and we help them with a different kind of curriculum. We're usually involved for about 2-3 days a week. And then they're back in the school setting for things like English and maths. But if I use an example of the election last week, we did a piece of work with them where we talked to them about voting and the reasons why you vote and the history, how it came to be that everybody got the vote. And then we would actually enact a polling booth. So they had to look at the candidates and understand what they were standing for. Then they had to do a vote. And this is all about empowering them to think, well, this is you. This is your responsibility. You will shape what happens in the community. And so again, just using different hooks to engage. But it covers a whole range of things. And again, trying to get them back into mainstream education, thinking about what is their kind of career path look like? Is it apprenticeship? Is it some other form of work, education, etc.? So very varied. Yeah,
very varied, but also very interesting to hear. I mean, it's not that I struggled at school, but there were certain subjects that I didn't particularly enjoy going to, but if they were linked to football, I'd have been there no problem. And it's encouraging to see that the community trusts are highlighting that and using that as a way of engaging pupils. It really is great to see. We'll move on to the next pillar, which is the football for life. And you kind of touched on it briefly when we were speaking about Cormac Park. And this is kind of aimed at getting the grassroots clubs involved and getting a training facility. I think West Dyke are one that uses Cormac Park, and obviously the women's team as well. That's kind of been helped through the community trust, is that right?
Yeah, so we're really lucky. We've got Emma Hunter in our team, who's one of the women's team's managers. She has been quite inspiring to me and has really educated me a lot on some of the challenges that the women's game has. So that's been really helpful. And we run festivals at Cormac Park and hoping that later this month we may actually start the girls' festivals again. And this is all about getting young women into football, getting them excited by it. And the game is expanding enormously. And luckily, the women's team are supported by Boscalis, very, very generous sponsors who are really, really behind it. And I think as a club and as a community, we need that equality. We have to have that. So anything the trust can do to help promote the women's game, we're absolutely behind. Yeah.
But is it the community trust as well? Are they behind the summer schools as well for young boys and girls that are normally held?
So we run that. I mean, grassroots is really what we're about, and reinvigorating that post-pandemic, massively important. So we work with the SFA, and we're really trying to align to their strategy as well, so that we're complementary. And we try to partner with the others in the city as well, Sport Aberdeen and various organisations. And it's one thing that's definitely emerging after the pandemic is a real willingness to partner with different organisations, Sports Village, etc., to really come together. Can't remember where I was going with this. Where was I going? Grassroots. So, I mean, I think really what we need to be doing is pushing that whole agenda that anyone can get into football, and then our role is to provide a forum for that through support the leagues. But also summer camps are important to us, and we're just about to embark on 7 weeks of camps, and they're selling out fast. Again, a shameless plug if you're needing to get your children into camp. Yeah,
it's a shame Rory's too young, or he'd definitely be booted off to that.
Exactly. But we were really grateful we got to do it at Easter time, and we also did it in the May in-service day as well. So that was great. So it's just wonderful to have the children back. And I think the sad thing is we're restricted in numbers because of the COVID restrictions. So we can't have the normal numbers, but it's great for the kids. It's great for our team to be back out there. They're just loving it. Yeah. Football Life for Life takes you sort of from festivals, leagues, summer camps, but also there's then a pathway with some performance squads, etc., for those who are taking it that bit more seriously, showing a little bit more talent and interest in it. Things for different stages. Yeah, no, it's great to see. I mean, I loved the summer camps when I was growing up, and Jim Crawford and the rest of the coaches at Balgownie, you're a week long, and then hoping that you were at the week there when the first team were coming back to pre-season and getting them all to sign your shirts or shin pads or boots. It was just great, and it kind of, you felt involved and engaged, like to use a word that you've been saying, because you're training, albeit on a pitch below, but almost alongside the first team, and it's great to see. But in your impact report for last year, the Community Trust was trying to create active people, and there were 71,000 people involved in these sort of activities. That's just terrific numbers for given the year that we had. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. So, I mean, if truth be told, I suppose some of those numbers were, before pandemic. So, we were active in that year. But if you think about the impact that we've had, locally, and when I say that, that's in the Northeast. This comes out, and I always forget the full title, so I'm going to try and read it out here. Where is it? So we took part in the UEFA Grows Social Return on Investment model. And that was really helpful because it set the scene of what Scotland was doing in terms of football generally. But because we got involved with the Northeast, we also got some statistics that were peculiar to Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire. So we were able to demonstrate that the work that we were doing, now this is the Trust as a hub, if you like, to the whole of football activity, was worth about 110 million euro to the community. Now that is because largely there's a huge amount of savings in terms of healthcare. So it's something like 77 million euros worth of savings because of that improvement in healthcare. And then you have the impact on the economy and the social side as well. So I think what we've not been good at doing in Scotland is demonstrating the value of football beyond the 90 minutes. It really has, you get connotations about, well, you hear what the fans did in Glasgow, on Saturday, and not Aberdeen fans, clearly. That's not a way to celebrate, is it, in George Square necessarily? But you think about the wonderful things that foundations and trusts do. I mean, the Rangers Foundation does an incredible amount of work as well. We're not in competition. We're all helping our communities, and it's something really to celebrate. And at government level, when you have statistics that should be giving more weight at that level, just to show the good football across the community.
Yeah, and I suppose, well, I've not mentioned it yet, but the Community Trust were awarded the UEFA's Best Grassroots Football Club back in 2019. So obviously there's been, European-wide recognition for the work that the Community Trust does. So that has got in itself got to be celebrated, and it just shows, even though I suppose you're still in your relative infancy, only being 7 years old. It's just how far you guys have come.
And I think that, is testimony to Duncan and Duncan's vision. It's also a tribute to the team. I always think this sounds a bit, oh, you're such a soup, Liz, but they really are. The team are remarkable people, and the work that they do, it's almost a devotion rather than a job. It's a vocation. They live it and they breathe it, and they are so passionate about the people that they are trying to help. And I think because of that, I can see why UEFA would recognise the club for what they've done. I can't take any credit for that. That's for my time. But all I would say is, what I've seen since I've been in, I can totally get it, why they would get such an award.
And I think you're totally right. If you have a team that not only believes in the vision of the Community Trust, but believes in the job, let's say, that they're doing, it can only be a benefit to not only the community, but the Community Trust as well. The final pillar I want to just quickly look at with you is the healthy community pillar. So that covers a wide range of, you're tackling food poverty, but you also have initiatives such as walking football. Is it for the over 60s? Is that correct?
So healthy communities, again, another area paused by the pandemic, sadly. The healthy communities, if you like, sweeps up all generations. So yes, we do have, we prefer to say active aging. So there are programs for people who are maybe not at primary school age, and things like football fans in training, where this is a football fans getting fitter, if you like. So for those aged 35 and over, it's physical activity, information on nutrition. It's not a Weight Watchers weight loss program, but inevitably people do find that they lose weight as they're doing the program. But it's really about just health and getting active. I guess one area that we've been very sort of acclaimed for is our dementia work and our work around football memories.
I was coming to it, but on you go.
You're coming. Okay, so I can talk about that one then. So football memories is where we've been working with our fans, people with dementia, but also their carers can come in, and we've done things where we've used props along with former players. So props being, it might be a rattle, it might be former or older programs, and you've got a player like Joe Harper's been along and talked through some of the games, and something happens. That memory just unclicks, and people will talk about, I remember such and such a goal in the 70s, and it's, it is amazing. And then we do all sorts of things where, Christmas time, people are invited in for a meal, and it just helps the families as well as those who are suffering from this awful disease. So that's something that the Trust is very, very proud of. Again, it's had to pause, and we've had to find ways of trying to connect with some of these elderly people, and we did that during Still Standing Free when we were making all of our phone calls. The other thing we've not touched on that I guess spans both healthy communities but also education is our work in terms of mental health. And that is something you're going to be seeing a lot more of as we come out of pandemic. And I can talk a little bit about that if you want just now, what that's going to look like. So we probably will talk at some point about Still Standing Free. It's inevitable. But as part of Still Standing Free, we were doing these phone calls around, trying to alleviate social isolation. Mm-hmm. And became pretty evident as part of that there was a lot of issues out there, and what could we do to support that? So we started a program at Christmas time where we had a former player talking to one of our staff, and we invited fans to come along. And this was about talking about a player's mental health and the challenges that they had faced and the ways in which they tried to cope with it. So things like, living away from home for the first time as a young player, not getting home as regularly as they might want, and as they furthered their careers, sometimes the tensions and relationships about being at distance, getting injured. How do you come back from injury? The pressures around that, and careers ending quickly or shorter than they thought they would be, and all those kind of pressures. And I do remember one fan who attended had lost his job on the day that he came along, and he sent us a message afterwards to say coming to that event was what kept him going that day. And you don't quite know what that means, but he was clearly in quite a dark place. And it really helped just to hear others talking. So that sort of helped on the adult side of things. But what we're incredibly proud of and excited about is a new program called Mindset. And Mindset has been developed over the last 18 months to 2 years between ourselves and an American not-for-profit charity called Grassroots Soccer. Okay. And those of you who've seen it on the kit will be on the kit at the moment. Grassroots Soccer, as I say, American, but have been working in Africa for the last 15 years using football and play-based activity as a hook to help with AIDS prevention amongst youth. So teaching them behaviours that will help in that prevent that terrible disease. So things, it's okay to say no. All of these kind of things. How does a young girl do that in Africa? And they use football as that hook. Now, there was the connection between Bobby Clark, his son Tommy. Tommy heads up Grassroots Soccer. Okay. So there was a connection with the club. And Tom Crotty, who is one of the directors now of the AFC, also sits on Grassroots. So there was a discussion about mental health is becoming more and more of an issue, and what could we do? So Trust and Grassroots Soccer have developed a curriculum that is based around primary 6, primary 7, and then S1, S2, that transition primary to big school, and puberty's kicking in, and all sorts of things are going on. And so what the program does is it uses, if you like, 12 keywords and uses play-based activities to kind of focus on that word. So if you think about resilience as being one of the words, there's a really, really fun activity that you play, and then the trainer will stop the activity, and then the conversation opens up about, well, what made you think like that? So if you imagine, again, I could talk for hours on this, but if you imagine this activity is all about throwing balls, there's chaos created with the balls, noise going on, the trainer stops it and says, how do you feel? And the young person said, God, it was all over the place. And he said, that big football that I stuck in at the end that had the word exam all over it, what does it make you feel at exam time? And the conversation turns into, sometimes I feel overwhelmed, I don't know what to do, and I get stressed out. Well, what do? You make a list, you check the list off. So the Mindset program is being trialled. It's been trialled this year in a primary school and a secondary school, and the University of Aberdeen have been working with us to evaluate the progress, and we've got really good results. So now the plan is to roll it out. During the pandemic, the NHS funded a number of other short programs in primary schools, and both councils are really interested in it. So our aim is to roll it out regionally and then working with grassroots, potentially nationally and internationally as well.
Wow, fantastic.
So really excited about it.
Yeah.
Good fun.
No, and I think that's, was something that I was going to bring on to, but, it's fine to bring it to the forefront, because mental health has been something that has affected many people during this time. And, it's even having this podcast has been something for me. When I've had a down day or a down week, it's something that's kept me going, because football is a passion for myself, and it's something that I enjoy talking about. And I know that then every Monday or Friday I was getting in touch with Calum, and we were having our football chat, but we were also being able to speak to each other as well, and check in on each other. So it's great to see that the Community Trust is working in this field and has got something that can be developed, and it's certainly exciting to see how that comes together when it's released.
It's frightening when you hear that 1 in 4 people are impacted, and the Mindset program is all about mental health, not mental illness, and saying that everybody has mental health, just different levels of it, and trying to, it sounds cliche, but make it cool to talk about it, that there isn't a stigma. And just by opening up, it helps.
Yeah, and I think especially at that age group that you're currently trialling at is definitely key. And obviously, just to go back briefly, you touched on the dementia program. You spoke about the advert or the video that went out, and again the reach that had. So you're totally right. It's great to see the impact that's having, and just the other things that you're doing in amongst the community. And the reach that it's having and positive impact it's doing as well. I just want to talk, and you said, we'll speak about the Still Standing Free campaign, but before we do, or you could maybe link it in, the partnerships and the donors that the Community Trust have, just how vital have those partnerships been to the Community Trust over this last year, and have they been helpful with the Still Standing Free campaign?
So I'm a great believer in partnership. I think we should never be competing. We should be like a jigsaw, all coming together. If you take Still Standing Free, the partnership with CFINE, was fundamental to us being able to do this. And CFINE are a tremendous organisation, and we worked seamlessly with them, and at times it was, especially at the beginning, it was chaos, but they were fabulous. And they've been working with the Trust anyway in the schools. When you talked about breakfast clubs and after school clubs, we've been working with them anyway. So partnership, absolutely key to what we do. We need to be doing more of it. We've been, in terms of when you're talking about donors, etc., during the pandemic, we relied on a number of really, really generous donors to help us. But equally, the other part that we focused on was around our education provision. We understood that we had to work really, really hard to keep those education contracts going with the council. And, from a purely business point of view, that's what kept the Trust going. Was making sure we shored up those contracts. And from a very, very community-focused point of view, it's what we wanted to be doing, was working with these children and keeping them going in this. It was if you think back to the beginning when, we couldn't go anywhere, there was a real concern. And again, it was part of my education, was what these children, a lot of them were actually the circumstances they were living in. So working with the council really, really hard during that initial lockdown, as I say, to do online provision, but also to do face-to-face online with some of these children that needed that one-to-one support. In some circumstances, the school asking us to actually partner with them and go out to visit, socially distanced, but to knock on that door and say, is everything okay? And here are some packs for you to do that were football focused, but again, they were work packs. So again, there was a real partnership. We worked really hard, particularly over the summer, and we asked the team, I had to ask our team to make some tough personal decisions. We asked the team to ensure that they didn't do anything extracurricular. So they couldn't coach at the youth academy, for example. Now that was a big ask. They couldn't go to gyms. All of these things, we shut it down so that we could say to the council, we have taken every single step to mitigate the risk so that we can get back physically into the schools and be helping our children and helping the schools. And so we were really proud. We were the first organisation to be treated as core staff within the council beyond their teaching staff. So that partnership, really, really important. And the staff did get back to teaching at Youth Academy and they did get back into gyms, but they had to wait a wee while, but I was very grateful.
But you speak about the donors, and you spoke earlier about the season ticket sales last season that helped. And I just couldn't help but feel, and I don't know if you've ever had this discussion with Rob, and probably me saying it's going to prompt a discussion with Rob now, but when the season ticket details were announced, there was obviously the talk of fans being able to claim for a refund. I'd have loved to seen the club say, well, instead of maybe individuals taking the refund, if you did want to take up a refund, why not donate the cost of that refund to the community trust? Because I know other clubs look at similar initiatives, and there might be fans that said, well, I could take the refund, but I'd rather see that money go somewhere else because them as an individual are in a position where they don't necessarily need it. It'd have been nice from my point of view to see something like that put forward.
It's an interesting one. It's probably for you to ask Rob that one. What I will say is we were really grateful that we had a number of people who had booked places at camps and various activities. And so the money was sitting there with us, and we made an offer for refunds. And what we did say was, you would have the option for a refund, or you could donate the cost to us. So I would like to say thank you to all of the fans who had booked places on camps and opted to donate to ourselves, and said it was very, very generous.
That's good to hear as well. We're coming to the end of the podcast. Thank you for taking out the time to speak to me this evening. You spoke about there the help that you provided at the Still Standing Free campaign. There was also the calls, the food deliveries, the teddy bears that you saw the picture of Niall McGinn with at the Children's Hospital. Just so much involved and just fantastic to see. And it makes you proud not only of the football club, but the community trust that's all helped our local community.
It was... It was wild. So, coming in...
All in 2 months of you starting.
Well, I think it was 4 or 5 weeks. It was madness. But again, I hadn't, all this is happening. COVID is appearing. We don't know how bad it's going to be. And it was the team saying, Liz, we have got children who we feed before school. We feed them after school. They get a free lunch. And it's coming to Easter time, and Easter time we would normally have them at food and fun camps. These kids are not going to get something to eat. And it hadn't fully clicked. I was still finding my feet. And they were passionate about it. And again, a phone call to see Fine and me saying, what do you think? Would you be interested? And it snowballed. And I would say within 3-4 days, we were, pretty much organised. We were good to go when suddenly Boris shut us down. I think it was the night before we were going to start doing it. He shut, lockdown came. And suddenly we were into, well, are we allowed to go out there? So there was a whole next rammy of, do we need police permission, and all of these things kind of snowballed. So it was a crazy start, I would say, and we set up fundraising that weekend and all of these things, and we're applying for grants to help us, and we're doing all of this kind of admin-y stuff in the background. Within about a week or two, I then get a phone call from lovely Dave saying, Liz, this is going great, this is wonderful. How would you feel about setting up a call centre? And this is the new boss, and I'm going, yes, okay. Terrified would be the word, but yes, okay. And he said, okay. He said, I want you to phone 12,000 fans. I'm going, yeah, But as it stands, we're at about 20,000 fans. Wow. We supported 15,000 meals. We, as I say, I've touched on some of the things. Online delivery of curriculum. We ended up doing PE at Pataudry. I don't know if anybody participated in that, but that was our own. If you haven't, go onto YouTube.
Yeah, YouTube is still there.
Yeah. PE at Pataudry. So, our very own versions of Joe Wicks, but, using examples of the Joe Lewis move, or I know he's gone now, but there was a special Scott McKenna move. And so we kept coming up with innovative things throughout to just change it. The club and the trust came together as one. And it really was powerful. The Red Army supporting us, the generosity of people giving, their money, their time, but their advocacy, talking about what we were doing. That kept everybody going as well. We did crazy things. We had that, Eskimo Blonde song, and who would know that Dave and I have been in a video. It's just madness. But all those things were great for social media, just to keep that momentum going. And incredibly proud of what was achieved in the Northeast. And but you often hear it takes a village, and it really was a collective effort.
Yeah, and I think, certainly speaking from my own point of view, but maybe on behalf of most of the fans, I think yourself and your team should be proud of the work that you've done over this last year in helping everybody. And I know you've got a meeting shortly, so I'll just ask one last question. Does the next year, or what does the future hold for the community trust? You've briefly spoke there about the mental health side of things, but just where can the community trust go?
So it's a good question. So I wrote the strategy this year, and the strategy really was to get us through this pandemic with a view to the what next. I think we come back to what we talked about at the beginning. It's coming back to that piece around maximising potential through physical and mental well-being. So education will remain a big focus. What I would like to see is a real pathway there. So from a child starting with the trust at primary school to secondary school, maybe they have to go via an alternative academy and they come out. And then what next? And the area we haven't really touched on to any great degree is employability. So what could that look like? And all of that work is kind of underpinned by youth ambassador programs, etc. Interwoven with the mental health piece in there as well, because mindset through the schools. I think the other big area is around that whole health. So football would probably, it's going to sit within health, but you can think nutrition. Haven't really looked at that properly. We'll get that active aging piece up and running again, that whole piece about community. So, I think if I had to put it in a nutshell, it'll be around that employability and education, and it'll be around that physical and mental well-being. There will be lots of opportunities for people to volunteer. There will be lots of beg, please help us to fundraise, please donate. We need that support, because we really have got big ambition to really help more people in the Northeast if we can.
No, I think we'll leave it there, Liz. That's been great to chat to you and get an insight and a feel into what the Community Trust has done, doing and hoping to do in the future, because I think there is maybe fans out there that don't fully appreciate or maybe know too much about the Community Trust. So hopefully this will help broaden the knowledge of many fans out there, and like you said, hopefully maybe encourage a few more to donate and maybe volunteer if that's what they're up for doing.
We love that. So thank you very much. It's been a privilege to talk to you and to all the fans out there, and hopefully you'll have me back and I can tell you some more about what we're doing with Duncan Skinner's legacy in a few weeks' time, because it will be quite exciting.
No, definitely. It'll be good to get you back on, even when the new projects are out, to help promote them as well. It's certainly we could work together on that.
Smashing. Thanks, Glen.
Thanks, Liz. Well, folks, there we have it, an interview with the Chief Executive of the Community Trust, Liz Bowie. I hope you found this episode really insightful. It certainly opened my mind to the work that the Community Trust have been doing. We put the Community Trust Twitter page above Liz's picture, so if you want to check out the Community Trust page, please do so. Follow them, get engaged with the work that they're doing. And if you've enjoyed this content and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like the video, hit that subscribe button, follow us on Twitter at @RTG_podcast for more content of this nature, and maybe follow up interviews with Liz herself, former player interviews, and of course, our preview and reviews that we do on all Aberdeen games. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time.